Facts and Fancies by and with Armando Iannucci. Monster-eyed bugs.
If while you're listening to this you feel a bit woozy, the chances are you've got one of those bugs going around just now that makes everything seem rather strange. You can't put your finger on it, it's just that everything feels slightly odd, and you think you're about to bulk up breakfast on your newsagent's dog. You feel worse if you shut your eyes, then everything starts spinning round and your nose streams enough mucus to fill a bus. Spring in particular plays havoc with the inside of people's faces, which ooze and project liquids previously dormant at the back of the neck all winter. It's a time when exotic bugs and viruses capable of coaxing a yard of phlegm out of anyone's mouth go house hunting in the sinuses. So to help you recognise these beasts of the nose, the following is a swift guide to new germs recognised by the government's chief medical officer. Russian child. A small virus from northern Odessa which normally sweeps across Asia but was blown backwards this year by a freak cough from an oncoming flock of migrating chaffinches. The virus now has extensive hold of Hull and parts of the Peak District. Tiny at first, the germ lodges outside the throat and then grows in size to about the shape of a small child. It exhausts the host by demanding attention throughout the night and then insisting on sleeping on you during the day when you should be leaving for work. Recommended cure, fast dancing. Flippancy flu. A curio from Brazil. A small blue germ that lives in the eyes and makes the carrier appear flippant. By sucking the juice out of nerves in the head, the virus causes involuntary twitching of the eyes upwards as if tutting or expressing unconsidered dismissal of an idea. These spasms occur most frequently at times of highest emotional tension, such as in potentially violent confrontations with an aggressor or at the reception of bad news, for example, close family bereavement. At these moments, a resigned roll of the eyes can look unsympathetic and has attendant dangers. In the 1934 war between Chile and Paraguay, an entire village of subjugated Chileans was put to death for being plain rude. Recommended cure, masks. Belter's distress. A little understood viral infection which causes a streaming nose and sporadic weightlessness. It's thought to be carried by astronauts and their wives. Recommended cure, heavy tissues. The wild bug of Wickham. A 14-inch long virus that roams Buckinghamshire. It escaped 3 years ago from an Amersham Pharmaceuticals laboratory and has since fed off berries and discarded walnuts and the occasional saucer of evaporated milk put out by kindly Buckinghamshire people. The wild bug of Wickham, despite its sensationalist name, is actually quite a placid creature, keeping itself to itself, running away from cars and scooters, and living in small family burrows on the banks of the River Misbourne. It's covered in soft fur and performs gentle acrobatics in front of children. However, if you touch this bug, your stomach implodes and empties its contents down the inside of your legs, so keep well away. Recommended cure, firearms. Dawson's imposter. A bug which enters the nervous system using deception. It has 15 silver-backed wings which act like a mirror. As the bug enters the victim's body, it uses this mirror cloaking device to scare off approaching antibodies, who rush towards it but then see what looks like thousands of organisms coming straight at them, and so run away. Dawson's imposter can also mimic the sound of a heart, acquire the smell of liver, and distract corpuscles by throwing a high-pitched whine, as if coming from the other side of a blue vein, and then scampering down an open intestine when the other organisms aren't looking. It is one of the most complex single-cell life forms known to man. Recommended cure, not required. It's actually quite harmless. Munchausen's companion. Related to Dawson's imposter, Munchausen's companion is a bogus bug. It manages to enter the body using a forged certificate and creepy legs stolen from a proper bug it coches and throws into a laundry cupboard. It then swans into the stomach like nobody's business and pretends to disrupt the gastric tract. It gets away with it for a few seconds, causing the victim to think he's puking, before scarpering when challenged by the body's autoimmune system, which discovers that its DNA makeup is a hoax. Recommended cure, security cameras on all entrances.
Identity parade.
What is identity? This appallingly massive puzzle has to be solved pretty soon if the go-ahead is ever to be given to identity cards. The idea is to start issuing these cards once considerable public suspicion has been qualmed. The government plans to do this by bringing them out as identity scratch cards, which anyone can buy in the shops for £1. All you do is scratch off the special square, and if the person on the card looks anything like you, you win some cash on the spot and up to a year's worth of free identity. On a grander scale, one card is chosen from a big revolving tumbler each week, and the owner gets to choose his or her dream identity for the rest of their life, whether it's as a sultan of a nutmeg-rich province in Malaysia, a successful pornographer, or a major sports personality recently retired from the circuit and opening a health insurance business in Northolt. There's also a rogue proposal to introduce scratch and sniff identity cards, containing both a photo of yourself and your personal smell. But a pilot scheme recently carried out in Bicester showed this to be a non-starter, when it turned out the personal smell of everyone there was of tears and chips. So, identity cards of some sort are on their way. But the philosophical problem of identity has yet to be resolved. After all, what will the cards show? Already, people going through a midlife crisis, or folk in their late teens confused about their sexuality, are lobbying to have a blurred photograph on their card. Others suffering from low self-esteem want their photo to be taken badly, possibly in harsh lighting. Children still developing their personality will have to have their identity cards updated every month, and some precautions may yet be taken to stop kids swapping old identities in playgrounds as they try to build up the best collection in the school. Identity is such a complex, multi-pronged imponderable that there is a good case for abandoning a simple card system altogether in favour of a more sophisticated format such as CD-ROM. This way, if you're ever arrested for football hooliganism, you can present the police with a small interactive identity disc, which will not only contain detailed visual representations of your physical appearance, but by clicking on a sequence of icons representing various members of your family, can lead officials through on-screen testaments from friends and relatives, all about your generosity, good timekeeping and sense of fun. Activate the brain icon and a psychologist from a top London hospital comes up and relates your fiery temper to a number of traumatic incidents that happened to you in a field when you were 3, which can be called up if you double-click on the tractor. Mitigating scenes of good character behaviour showing you entertaining at a children's party, being pleasant to a frightened nun, and carefully cleaning up around the house after being sick can also be downloaded. The whole thing comes to £85.99, so at this stage it may not be possible for everyone to afford an identity until the price drops. Now, torrents of suspicion about ID cards have recently been bursting out of the troubled faces of civil libertarians, who argue that having your head put on a piece of plastic is just one step away from having the rest of your body incarcerated in a salt mine for 40 years. However, the collection and storage of valuable information about bits of us has been going on for some time now. Fingerprints, those once innocent laughter lines on our thumb's forehead, are today's deadly informers. Our blood types can turn supergrass. DNA sings like nobody's business, while dental records are all too ready to help police with their inquiries. Indeed, so effective are dental records in identifying the individual that Scotland Yard has plans to store replicas of all the nation's teeth in a recently commissioned national mouth. So, the Rozzers are onto us anyway. Most of our skin and body fluids have already been bottled, labelled and corked in the information vault, so all a simple photograph will do is give the police something to laugh at when they arrest us. Add to this the promiscuous contact your name and address comes into whenever you join a book club or accept a chintz free gift offer through the post, and it's clear there's a cell door with our name on it somewhere in the prison system. I suppose what gets us about ID cards, though, is the conclusive nature of their labelling. Our entire self, our history and our potential frozen onto a single slip of dates and images. The thought of it, being summed up before we've had a chance to get started. If only the damn thing could be issued after we died, then that might help temper the ignominy. But short of providing explanatory footnotes and excuses with our card, that's what we'll have to endure. The only option left will be to instill a sense of individuality and uniqueness into the way we hand them over. If stopped by an official and asked for your ID card, hand him or her a piece of hand-dyed fabric and say, "This cloth, this warp and weave of 1,000 strands, This product of the back end of 10,000 worms says more about me and what I am as an individual, sir, with the rights and freedoms and magnificence of an individual, than your contemptuous square of beggarly plastic. And then hand over your card defaced with spit. Then watch them charge you with contempt as they look up your name and address on computer.
The God-honest truth about Christmas.
Until recently, practically all of us believed the New Testament account of the Nativity to be completely true. However, new evidence found by scientists and friends of scientists casts doubt on the miraculous nature of the story and possibly spoils everything. The evidence is now well known, but here it is again. The star. Astronomers have spent thousands of years trying to come up with an acceptable theory about the movement of the planets and their cusps that would explain the references in the Nativity story to a star in the east guiding the wise men to Bethlehem. Now it looks like they needn't have bothered. It seems that a simple mistranslation has corrupted our interpretation of the original text. The word star is not, it's now claimed, referring to a celestial object, but instead to a celebrity. So what the wise men found on their travels was a celebrity from the east who was travelling to Bethlehem at the time. Papyrus ticket stubs found in an Egyptian museum show that an Aramaic dancer called Menachem Habakkuk was touring about then, and it would have been highly unusual for his tour not to have taken in Bethlehem, then recognised as one of the 4 dance regions of the ancient world. All the wise men had to do then to find Bethlehem was follow posters. The wise men. Work done recently by histosociologists proves that wise men didn't exist at that time. By cracking open fossilised skulls and colouring the rings in the brain, it's possible to tell how clever the Scullies were. Studies show that levels of intelligence about 2,000 years ago were so low as to be amusing. Men would spend most of their working day spitting, and for entertainment would compare the consistency of their spit with those of their companions. Women would mostly stay in the home, hiding from rocks and certain animals that looked like rocks. Nobody clever was born until well after the Crusades, and there were certainly no remotely wise men before then. The stable. This certainly didn't exist, since most zoologists now believe that animals weren't discovered until 420 AD at the earliest. Before then, people farmed plants and buds and hunted down wild bushes, either for food or to tame as domestic pets. Most commercial establishments had outbuildings devoted to quite sophisticated methods of plant cultivation, so a more accurate translation of the Gospel original would be, there was no room for them at the inn, so they slept in a nearby greenhouse. And they heard a host of heavenly angels singing, Behold, the King of Kings is born this day. There are 3 main inaccuracies in this text. Firstly, lexilinguists tell us that the phrase, Behold, the King of Kings is born this day, is most likely a misreading of an extremely similar Hebrew phrase meaning, Behold, the King of Kings is not born this day. The misreading occurred either in translation or, more likely, at the actual event itself through mishearing what was being said. This leads us to the second area of doubt, which is whether such a complex choir of voices could actually have been heard at all. Oral sociologists tell us that the ability to hear in any great complexity didn't develop until about the 1200s. Before then, it was more likely that people could hear no more than 2-dimensionally. Certainly, early ear muscles would have been unable to cope with a 3-deep choir 45 degrees up from the horizontal in the sky. It's more likely that the sound heard by the witnesses to the Nativity was someone whistling because he was happy. Certainly not angels. For here is perhaps the most startling finding. According to recent work done by psychobiologists, angels did exist at that time, but not as heavenly beings. It seems clear now that a tribe of little 4-foot men with stumps on their backs that were probably wing relics from earlier in the evolutionary chain did settle in southern Jordan at around 40 BC, and angel droppings dating from then were found last month in a Gaza cave by a young terrorist boy. But it's also clear through evidence that these angels were scared of heights, so cannot be the ones referred to in the Nativity story singing in the sky. In the face of all these findings, the whole matter should now be concluded once and for all.
Armando Iannucci's Facts and Fancies was produced by Jonathan James Moore.